It is the Anfield Wrap. It's Neil Atkinson after Liverpool have gone to Brighton and Hove Albion and drawn 2-2. I am joined by Clive Tildesley, by Phil Blundell, by Ian Ryan, by Harriet Pryor, and we are in association with Green King. The Anfield Wrap is sponsored for the 23-24 season by Green King, where football is more than a game. The sports venues are showing every televised Liverpool fixture over the course of the season, so rather than doing nonsense with dodgy streams, the most important thing when you watch football is to do it with a sense of togetherness, so do that and do it down at your local Green King pub. They've also launched a Green King Sport Instagram page, which will be the home to, well, occasionally me, which, you know, is a double-edged sword. You get enough of me, I suspect, but you might want more. There's deals, there's competitions, and they happen throughout the season. If you get them, if you follow them, you won't be the first to know about all this. You'll also be helping the Anfield Wrap, and that would be very, very kind of you indeed. But we'll get back into what matters. Brighton and Hove Albion 2, Liverpool 2. Philip, you and I were there. It was an oscillating game. It's one of the oddest games I've ever seen. Lots of bits of it don't operate like normal games of football should. There's lots and 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 lots of footballers looking at each other like, is the space going to be opening up here? What's the risk reward? Should I or shouldn't I play that pass? And it really just put the game on a really mad curve for, I think, at least 60 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a game of football where the ball was stationary with someone standing over it for quite as long as yesterday. It was like a whole huge chunk of it was just taken out of the game because it was someone putting the foot on the ball. They weren't being pressed and they were going, right, what do we do with this? Everyone's marked here. I'm not quite sure what to do. And that's sort of where their first goal comes from, because it's a bit of a, oh, well, I've got to move it to someone, and moved it to McAllister, made a mistake, was pressed, and we were punished. But the whole game sort of plays out in if we get this wrong, we might get punished, and it's both teams doing that. I think it's really interesting. There's one moment that stood out for me, sort of quite late in the second half, where Szoboszlai goes to press the goalkeeper, and he sort of looked at Nunes as if Nunes should have been pressing the goalkeeper, and he didn't get anything out of it. The ball was played around him, and the manager had a real go at Szoboszlai for doing it. Like, as in, we've been told not to do that, because I thought it was very obvious from the start that when Verbruggen had the ball, there was just mark up and don't press him. And then a couple of times you'd see they'd do it and they'd go over someone's head and they'd start off an attack. And I think it takes a lot of discipline to do that in a strange way. And it was both teams felt like they were trying to figure out what to do. And I think Brighton are quite a hard team to figure out, because you never know what team they're playing, do you? They make so many changes with such regularity that you could plan for 3 players, and none of them could be in the starting lineup, and you have to adjust as you go on. And I thought second half, we did adjust to it a lot better, and I thought we grew into the game. The second half was much better than the first.
Clive, Brighton are clearly a good side, but as Phil says, they're also a unique one. Squad management unique, style of play unique, swapping the goalkeepers over unique. So many aspects of it means they are a unique challenge.
I think they are possibly the most strategic team in the Premier League under De Zerbi. You guys wouldn't have seen what followed on Sunday afternoon, which was another very similar match between Arteta and Guardiola, rather than between Arsenal and Manchester City. Now, if you're coming up against a coach who's basically doing pawn to bishop 6 and then sitting back with his arms folded and a wry smile as if to say, what are you going to do next? You've got 2 choices. You can either make a chess move, or you can say, no, we're not playing chess. I'm not a coach, but I do know that Liverpool at their best in the Klopp era have had an intensity and an energy about them, a speed about them, slightly an element of chaos about them. And I just felt that they chose to play Brighton's game. And the first half was just weird, because even after Liverpool had conceded, I kind of knew how they would equalise. And we had 2 really, really good football teams on the field, but they were at their most dangerous when their opponents had the ball. Now, I spent all my life trying not to sound like a dinosaur, and I understand playing out from the back. But one of the elements of Liverpool that I've really liked in the Klopp era is they've never been frightened to go long. When I say long, I don't mean Burnley long. I mean the kind of long that Trent and Virgil can go with really good diagonals, just turning somebody round, just using the menace that they've got in the front 3. I'm not a coach, but my conclusion on the first half is the big mistake was to try to play Brighton at their own game.
This is both true, Ian, and simultaneously Liverpool going 2-1 up. And that to me is one of the oddest parts about that game. It seemed like you actually got to see in, as Phil's mentioned at the Adringa goal, you get to see in there literally what Liverpool are concerned about, what they're trying to see not happen. But you also get to see in our opening, our equaliser, and even in the goal that made the penalty, the winner of the penalty, you get to see what it is that Brighton are scared of as well. And it pulled the game. I mean, Brighton start off with a really strong space to set pieces. I would point that out, and I thought all the way through Brighton set pieces were excellent. But it pulled the game into genuinely it just simply being moments. And as Clive says, Liverpool are at the most dangerous when they win it back. Brighton know that, and it just skews the way all of it goes. But then when there's suddenly spaces for either side looks the business.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think before the match, the manager spoke about Brighton being the best coached team in the league, and there's clearly a lot of respect between Klopp and De Zerbi. That's obvious, but I almost think that plays out in the first half an hour where Liverpool showed them too much respect. And maybe I was naive to go into this game thinking something different, but I thought there would have been more of an energy and an intensity on the back of what happened at Tottenham. And don't get me wrong, Brighton are on the back of their own poor result, getting pumped for 6 by Villa, so I suppose both sides would have had something to prove. But I was a little bit surprised by the slow start, and it does take Liverpool a while to work their way into the game. And I think giving them too much respect felt like something, certainly for that first 30. And then, as you said, Neil, in terms of how it then develops, you're not surprised by how the goals come about, because I think what Brighton do, they take a chance. And Lewis Dunk, for all his, I would say, improvements under this manager, and maybe arguably under Potter as well, he does like to take a chance, and you get that from the first goal where he plays it into midfield and Liverpool are alive to the situation, they jump on them, and then it comes from there. But after watching that first half an hour, there's not a chance in the world if you'd have said to me this is going to be 2-1 on 45, I'd have believed you, because it was such a poor opening from Liverpool. And I think they maybe get the selection wrong as well, if I'm being honest. I didn't like the selection, and it's nothing really against Harvey Elliott, who I think at times this season has come into football matches and done ever so well. He comes on in games, and I think he's made a real difference, apart from maybe Bournemouth aside, which is strange circumstances. But I think he's had those moments where you can genuinely see what he's done when he's come onto the pitch. But I didn't like the makeup of the midfield.
It was like 4-4-2 without the ball, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was, and I think for me there was a lack of physicality in there. So if you're going to play McAllister, who I think has got lots and lots of positives to his game, certainly with the ball when he's further up the pitch, but he is small in size. He's not hugely physical. Elliott's not hugely physical. So Bosley is, but with those two players in the middle of the park, I thought, I'm not too sure. And I think there was a getting around the pitch issue, certainly for the first 30 as well. But as Phil says, they grow into it a little bit, they get handed one, and then we go from there.
It didn't look balanced, is what I thought. I would have loved a Harvey Elliott off the bench, because I think he is someone that can come on and provide the energy and provide the change. And when you look at the bench yesterday, particularly obviously because of the suspensions and the Gakpo injury in the forward line, there's no one that you feel like you can come on and really make a big impact. Gravenberch comes on at half time. I think he does really well, but I would have preferred Endo or him to start the game, and then you've got either one of those and then Elliott to bring on off the bench and make a difference. It just felt like it lacked a little bit of balance, and Elliott's not a natural Curtis Jones, and I think people won't like the fact that we did really miss Curtis Jones in the game yesterday.
Massively missed him.
I feel like he provides that balance when he's playing alongside the other two, and for me, McAllister, I don't want to go all in on him, but he looked lost in that position when he didn't have the assurance of a Curtis Jones ahead of him, when he didn't have Szoboszlai, who was playing basically alongside him. Szoboszlai pushed a little bit higher up the pitch yesterday when the press wasn't working as efficiently and didn't exactly work as Jurgen Klopp would have wanted it to. McAllister just looked a bit lost picking up the pieces, and for me the whole system then became a bit staggered. But I feel like there was a bit of a inconsistency or a gap between the plan that Jurgen Klopp set out for them yesterday, particularly in that first half or first 30 minutes, and what they actually managed to carry out on the pitch. Because there was times, I think Phil referenced it earlier, where it felt like the press didn't know when to go, when to hold back, and Jurgen Klopp had maybe said, maybe leave that player man mark there, do that there. There were so many things to consider with a Brighton team who made 6 changes, I believe, as well, and had so many different elements going on, so many different things to think about, that I think they just struggle with so many different elements and tying them all together, and that's why you get a first 30 minutes in particular that looked a little bit out of rhythm, that looked like it didn't have that flow and that consistency. And then that coupled with the fact that Liverpool really, I mean, they've got away with it because they've come back into games, but they've conceded a lot of goals in the first halves of this season. I think a stat came up on the thing yesterday. It was 7-1 in first half as the second half goals conceded. Now probably 8-2, I presume, after yesterday. So it just felt like that first half we couldn't grow into it as well as Jurgen Klopp would have wanted us to. And I just think there was a bit of a gap between the plan that he set out and how the players managed to execute it on the pitch.
I have to say I was surprised Elliott started. I think we've seen going away from home to good teams enough now with him in the midfield, and I just don't think it works. I think when you want to play him, you want to know you're going to have 60-65% of the ball. I don't know what possession we had yesterday, but whatever it was, you weren't picking that team expecting to go there and have 60-65%, able to have him time on the ball, picking passes in front of him. Yeah, I've sort of likened it to the midfield with McAllister, Jones and Szoboszlai being like two nightclub bouncers, sort of going, well, we're looking after him. And if you put Elliott there, it's just not the same thing. Like, there's a lot of they're not overly physical players. These like Szoboszlai and Jones and Gravenberch, it's not physical, but they're big. They'll win second balls. They'll get around the pitch, and that's how this McAllister thing can work. I don't think it can work if you've got Elliott away from home against what are a good team. I just don't. It's not for. It's not for me.
I mean, I think what's more intriguing is that they're not physical players like Henderson, Fabinho and Milner. And I mean, obviously I haven't been party to the discussions you've been having this season. Harriet's used the word, which I'm sure has recurred over and over since the first minute of the first game, balance. And there clearly isn't the balance that they anticipated with the squad, because McAllister was kind of the first signing, but then they put 100 mil on the table for a number 6. They put whatever it was on the table for Lavia. So we haven't seen McAllister anywhere other than 6 yet, have we? And
Pretty much.
And yet, I guess he wasn't bought to play there. So it is a work in progress. Endo, fine. I mean, you're Liverpool, you can afford to buy a player like that, and somewhere down the line, I'm sure he'll be of value. We saw enough of Bajcetic last season to feel as if there might be a first teamer there in the next 12, 18 months. We haven't seen Gravenberch at 6 yet, which we're told might be a possibility. I could talk for the next 45 minutes about Trent playing at 6. You've had to listen to that privately in the past, Neil. But I think there is a bigger issue here, isn't there? That this is actually still a work in progress, isn't it?
I think it very much is. I think you get to see that in amongst this game, Ian, that you can see that Liverpool are still working out how to play a little bit. I'm intrigued by this, though, in that I think that it looks even more staggered in a game like this one, because Liverpool set up differently for Brighton. There's no two ways about this. Liverpool have a Brighton plan. I think in a lot of other games this season, even including Tottenham away, I'm not saying Liverpool don't tweak around that, but Liverpool play the way they want to play, and obviously it changes against Tottenham because of the red card. But Liverpool have, I think, so it's even more marked in this one. There is a Brighton plan, and then when you don't feel like the Brighton plan is working, you're going, well, they look massively like a work in progress, and that's the tricky little thing here, trying to sort of work your way through this game in the context of what we've seen in all 8 of the league games.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think just in terms of the McAllister thing, in terms of the selection and putting him in that 6, I think certainly for this game as well, I think it does give you an indication of where the manager is on Endo, that he's not quite convinced by him. And I think that's not to say...
Doesn't even get off the bench.
Doesn't get off the bench. And that's not to say that Endo can't get up to a level. I certainly don't want to sit here and judge him after only a couple of months. That's unfair. However, I think he would have hit the ground running, and he was pairing in the minutes he's had. And the good game he did have, it comes against a championship team, albeit the best one. But it does come against them who are a level below. I don't think he's seen enough where he thinks, I can put him into this game. Because the game in Europe leads you down a path where you think he might, because he takes him off of the 45, but he doesn't do it. And I think you aren't asking McAllister to do something that's very, for me, uncomfortable for him. I don't think he wants to be in those situations. And I think you see it for the first goal where, listen, Virgil's not done him any favours, but I don't think he wants it on the turn there. And I think McAllister is comfortable on the turn, but there's less jeopardy when you're 30 yards further forward. And I think if you asked any of Liverpool's forwards, they'd all say, I wouldn't mind him being 30, 40 yards further forward. Now, you see it in the West Ham game where it plays out, where he delivers an inch-perfect ball for Darwin Núñez to go and finish the job on the day, and it's delicious, and it's just a brilliant football. But he can't really do that where he is. I don't think he's got that range of passion when he's got passing, when he's going to open it up from maybe 50, 60 yards away. He might do on the odd occasion, but I just don't think, again, back to the physical attributes thing, he doesn't look built for that position.
He wants to tackle, though. And that's what worries me about him. He reminds me a bit of Thiago without the ball. He still wants to make a challenge, and he will pick up yellow cards, and he'll get them in the first 10 minutes. And then you've got a real issue. I just like a jockeying six. I like a six who wants to hold his position and maybe let other people press a little bit. But McAllister's nature is he wants to go and make a challenge.
He is quite tenacious in his approach. But it's back to what I said about Harvey Elliott at the beginning. I don't think, if you look at those two players, they don't necessarily cover the ground in the quickest. And because they're not massively quick on the turn or even without the ball, you know, once you buy them, you buy them. And that's a problem, I think. And, you know, it's something Liverpool have got to figure out. And the manager alludes to it before the game, certainly in his kind of pre-press conference, where when he buys McAllister, he's not quite convinced where he's going to use them, which backs up your point, Neil. It does feel like very much work in progress.
Does McAllister come in when Fabinho's still at the club? He does,
yes.
Doesn't he? He comes in that early.
Yes.
I just think...
And Henderson's still there too.
Henderson's still there as well. I think there's a sense of, you're basically not... If you're not trusting Endo, like you're saying, Ian, are you then dragging players out of position at the detriment of playing McAllister further forward, just dropping Endo in and giving him a bit of a chance? Because I've seen comparisons online. I don't really buy these comparisons of the centre-back position when it was the COVID season and everyone was dropping out, and it took Klopp quite a while, and he admitted afterwards, like, I did play players out of position too long at the detriment of playing, you know, I know it wasn't ideal, but Reece Williams, Nat Phillips, who were natural centre-backs, putting them in there and then playing everyone else in their correct position just made everything click a bit sooner. Like, do you not think there's an element of just take a chance and then put him in those games, put McAllister in his correct position and just see how it pans out? Because then at least everyone around them has got their best position, is being able to use their attributes in the best way, and you're just giving it a go, or just not think he's ready to do that.
I mean, there's a case for it, but I just think it comes back to what he's seeing from Endo, and if he's not quite thinking...
He's not done anything wrong, though. Like, I understand what you're saying in terms of he's not had a particularly convincing game where you can look at him over the course of a game and think, yeah, he's ready to be dropped into the first 11, but I don't think he's done anything particularly wrong to disprove that.
I don't think there's a lot of dissimilarities between the two in terms of McAllister and Endo. Both, to me, look quite slow on the turn. So once you pass them, you pass them. And I think they do, as Clive said, they both like to tackle and try and win the ball, but they're not necessarily the quickest. But what McAllister does offer you is he's much better on the ball, I think. And I think that's where the manager's gone for, well, I know he's got real quality on the ball, so therefore I'll back that.
Matt, just dead quick, the not quick on the turn thing. So I've said that all the time, and I've said it about Endo and I've said it about McAllister. But there's a bit of a problem, which is, like I said it about Fabinho last season, you can drive yourself mad. Once you turned, you turned. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of footballers, once you turned, you turned.
It's not just a turn thing. It's getting to the ball.
I think it's more that and anticipating and leaping on it a little bit at times. But
if you've got a good position as a number 6, you don't get turned.
That's the key. I think it's more that than it is anything else. Like, for instance, I think Robertson's amongst the quickest footballers in the country, but he gets done on the turn by a dringer in this game a couple of times, because once you turned, and I think that's... So I just sort of wondered in this one whether or not maybe the manager does need to be a little bit bolder and have that attitude of, am I better off having the one who's got the experience for the position, pouncing on it and use McAllister higher? I think it's dead interesting as a thought experiment here, and I'll bring you in before Phil. Genuinely, if everyone's fit and available, what do you think his team is? Because I think Jones is playing almost as a double six in there with either Szoboszlai or with McAllister. Like, I think Jones ends up sitting really, really deep, and they're almost holding hands in order to be there as a little ball off.
Sorry, I know you're going to Ian, but I just say it works. It works with McAllister in that position for me when Jones is on the pitch, because they provide that balance and they provide the attributes that kind of protect each other, doesn't it? When Gravenberch's on the pitch as well, but with Elliott in there, it just didn't work. And in that position, then you're better off having Endo, who is less likely to get dragged out of position because he is just staying in the 6 role.
But let me be Jurgen Klopp. Mitoma barely gets a kick first half. And he gets a lot of kicks at the end second. So Elliott's there, and so Clive said before they play 4-4-2. Elliott plays right mid, and Elliott's job, more than anything else on the pitch, is to stop them getting it from March to Mitoma, dunk to March to Mitoma. Elliott's job is to sit there and go, you will not get that ball.
I think he comes off the pitch though without making an interception or a
But that's because they're not trying to play the ball there, because they can see that Elliott's in the way. So this
could be anyone. If that's just a body to be there, that could be anyone.
But
it's not necessarily Elliott that's there.
I know, but I'm just simply saying that that's the manager does that and sets that up that way, because he's thinking, How do we stop this fella who's hurt us loads in the past? And I think this is a dead hard game to talk about, Phil, without acknowledging. Literally, we got embarrassed there last year. A lot of those footballers got embarrassed there last year. Those footballers have been done. And then in the cup game as well, in the end, the way that goes, where last 10 Liverpool are really poor. And I genuinely think part of what this initial setup is, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Elliott thing's pre-programmed, is just simply stop them from doing the thing that hurt us last year over and over again.
Yeah, it probably did. But at the same time, we probably improved on the ball.
Exactly.
After it happened. Now, and this sort of, you were talking about
it's hard being a football manager.
thinking about them too much, and I think you have to. We've seen what happened. Newcastle have gone there this season and got absolutely run ragged. They lose 3-0. They weren't in the game at any stage because they just tried to play like Newcastle do, and Brighton went, okay, you try that, we'll do you. Thanks very much. That's 3-0. See you later. That's what they're capable of. So you have to adapt. I think they're the team you might have to adapt to most in the league because they're very clever. They're very well coached. They always seem to have a surprise on the pitch in terms of not a player you haven't heard of, but there's a player who you're not quite sure what it is exactly. You don't know what they're going to do, and it makes it very hard for everyone. I think you can have the best scouting in the world, the best analysts in the world, but they still manage to throw you a curveball.
Here's a little thought for you, and I'm not going to do my 1 hour monologue on Trent yet. He's about to spend 10 days in the company of a manager who thinks he's a midfield player. I'd be interested to see if where he plays for England in these 2 games.
Probably just won't.
Well, I disagree. What we haven't seen for England yet is Trent, Rice, Bellingham. He played on the left of the 3 when Bellingham wasn't available in June and did really, really well as the conventional midfield player. I know I've wanted to see him play for about 3 years now. I've always thought of him as an 8, but I just want to. I wish in pre-season. I know they did it a couple of games, and maybe it didn't work. I didn't see those games. I'd just like to tear one of those 6s off his back and just put him there and take away the responsibility for defending the right side of the Liverpool defence, at the Liverpool flank. I don't like him having that responsibility. He did fine yesterday, and I actually thought the first 20 minutes of the second half of Liverpool were really good, and he was part of that. But ultimately, he is the most creative player in that squad, and that is saying something. He can do stuff with the ball at his feet if he's looking forward rather than over his shoulder, which nobody else in that squad can do. And that's why I feel so passionately about him, because he is so damn good.
And then bring in a conventional right back, so bring in Gomez for the game yesterday, for example.
Why? I don't know whether Pavard was possible. And I know that he's not 23, but he can play right back and centre back, and he's played in the Champions League. He's playing for Inter Milan now, you know.
I think there was something in there. I thought what he might do yesterday was I actually thought he might start Gomez and Trent.
I thought he might.
And play Trent right mid and go from there and just sort of do bits and pieces.
Doesn't seem that into it, though, does he?
He's not into it. So this is the thing. Clive said he's going to go to a manager who thinks one thing. Let's be crystal clear about what the manager who works with every week thinks. But one more thing, Phil, before we move ourselves along a tiny little bit, is I just want to sort of touch on. There's another thing about this Liverpool side and why it does adapt for Brighton is because, as you were arguing last night with people on the internet, it's built to beat the bottom 10 home and away. So when it gets to Brighton, it's all about 60 points from the bottom 10. As crude as that might sound, that's what they're about. So they're going to adapt the other stuff as they go.
You can't sit here and say this is year 1. That's that. We've had 8 games and everyone's gone, year 1 this, year one. You can't expect in year 1 to just saunter into Brighton, who came, 6th last season? Spurs who were Spurs, Chelsea who were Chelsea, Newcastle who were Newcastle, and go, we're just going to come in and be well better than you because we're Liverpool and we've just suddenly got all these players and it's just going to click. No, that's not how it works. But what this team is about is it's built to basically crush the bottom 10, and we only played 2 of them so far. We win both games fairly comfortably.
Scored 3 goals in both.
Yeah. That's what this team's about. I'm not saying that anything you do against the top 10 is a bonus, but that's how you get yourself up the league, whereas the bottom 10 is the base, and we've got a lot of those games to come. We've still got 18 games.
The only one
of the bottom.
The only one of the top 10 that plays at home, they beat 3-0.
Yeah,
is worth pointing out as well at home. The only one that was at home.
It is the post-match pint, our post-match video from the Anfield Wrap. After every Liverpool match, the Anfield Wrap brings you the post-match pint.
It's the Anfield Wrap post-match pint after Brighton 2, Liverpool 2.
Drew Adesany's filming this on a bus. It's chaos.
Home, away and in Europe, the post-match pint brings you our immediate post-match reaction. To access this and loads more, download the Anfield Wrap app or join our YouTube members.
Could not get better than this.
What's interesting, Clive, for me through the game is actually when it becomes a conventional game of football. You said a minute ago, like the first 20 minutes of the second half, Liverpool are really good. Then Brighton, effectively, I think that the best thing that happens to Brighton in the game, and this is a horrible sentence, is the injury to the left-sided centre-half. Because what it does is it means that he flips Dunk to the left-hand side. They drop Gross in, and Gross, by the way, what a footballer. What a footballer he is. So clever. Gross almost comes and sits as almost like a third centre-half in the middle. Dunk and Gross on 2 occasions in the second half when I was watching it was screaming at March to go. You go high, we'll look after this now. You go all the way up there. You know, it is De Zerbi, he's educating the players, but the players themselves, especially Gross and Dunk, they're dictating so much of what goes on that pitch. And then again, in a conventional football way, because there's so much unconventional football in this game, for 20 minutes the second half belongs to Liverpool, and then the next 15 belong to Brighton as they absolutely overload their left-hand channel and put tons of pressure on Liverpool in quite an old-school way that elicits set piece after set piece.
Yeah, and it was fascinating because I think so few Liverpool games this season are born up to much analysis because they've been overtaken by events, red cards deserved or otherwise, all kinds of comebacks and dramas and refereeing. And of course there was a refereeing controversy. And I was actually screaming at the TV in the Titanic Hotel here, that's not a challenge. That has stopped a clear goal-scoring opportunity by pulling somebody back. That is a red card. I think it was arguable because Dunk came across, but it wasn't argued on TV until very, very late in the game. So again, there could have been an incident there. I'm surprised the Van Dijk handball wasn't given. I would never, in my remaining years on the planet, ever want that kind of handball to be given, but I was surprised it wasn't given. So again, there were these incidents which could have skewed the game, but they didn't. And as you say, the second half of the game became, once we put the chessboard away, became a proper football contest. And it was interesting. I think there's a feeling, again, without isolating moments, that if Gravenberch had scored, then that might have been
the turning point of the match in the end, Clive, I would argue, in that if that goes 3-1, Brighton were panicked, and they just whacked 6 the week before. They've conceded 2 in Marseille.
But Liverpool didn't go on from that position of strength that they had in midpoint of the second half. Somehow they didn't quite seize the opportunity in the way maybe not a year one team would have done.
I think that this, for me, Ian, is firstly, I think the Gravenberch incident is the key turning point of the match in one sense, but I completely agree with Clive. Also, if I was doing the Brighton Wrap or our friends at Albion Raw, I'd be saying first half, when it goes 1-0, we've got Liverpool rattled and we should do more with that. We should be getting in there 2 or 3, and we're still cagey. From our point of view, I do think when he misses that Gravenberch, I think there's a thing where suddenly they're vulnerable for 15, and Liverpool just can't quite find the gear. There's a thing in my head that on another day, if circumstances would be different, I think we'd be talking about Jota 3-1. If you see what I mean, he hasn't got cards to play. Simultaneously, I also just don't think it's a couple of times. I don't think Liverpool up it in quite the way I'd like. I also don't think the ball bounces for us. I think Nunez is great all the way through the game, but we can't quite get him close enough to their goal to get the best out of him. But that, for me, that's the key 10 minutes there, where after that chance, Brighton are rattled. Liverpool should go on and take the game away from them.
Yeah, I think, if it does go 3-1, I think from a heart and mind's point of view, Brighton are probably done, because I think Liverpool then just control it, or unable to control it, and Brighton maybe come onto them a little bit more and he can maybe pick them off and stuff, but it doesn't happen. And that's got to go in. He knew it himself, because his reaction when he volleys the microphone straight afterwards, he knew that has to go in. But yeah, Liverpool don't really find, for me, the forwards enough in the game, and I think it was a strange afternoon really for the forwards. I don't think Diaz has his best game, and I'm a massive fan, but he just, I'm listening, he's tenacious and stuff when he's getting about the pitch and putting himself about, but he can't really get into it. I thought Nunez was okay, but I'm probably not quite as kind of full of praise as maybe you are there, in terms of, when he was involved, he did everything right. I'm not sure. I think he took up some positions where maybe they were the wrong positions, and he could have maybe done a little bit more with his kind of runs and stuff. And Salah obviously gets the 2 goals, but I think Salah's listen, Salah's brilliant. He's one of the best goal scorers in the history of the club. But I think the last 15, he lets himself down. I think he's running into stuff where he needs to be a little bit smarter. And it's almost like he's taking it upon himself to say, I'm going to get the third here and I'm going to win the game for Liverpool. And I just think some of our choices in the final third in that last 15 were really, really, really poor. And you said there, Neil, and it struck me when the teams are breaking, you look at Liverpool's bench and you're thinking, if the first 11 aren't winning it, don't get me wrong, Gravenberch comes on and he should win it, but there's nothing much past that. Yes, there's a young Doak on the bench, but you're still not quite sure what you're going to get from a 17-year-old. The Gakpo and the Jota kind of misses in terms of them not being there. That's a massive blow. That hurts us because Liverpool have proven this season they've got the ability to change pretty much any game. And if you think you've handled the front three, well, guess what? There's these two coming off the bench and they can cause all kinds of problems because Liverpool's, I think some of the plus points this season is that the five, if you want to talk about them as a five, they're all so different. And they bring different things to the party. And Jota brings the ability just to nick one and be in the right moments at the right time. But Gakpo's really, really smart as well. And he may have started the game, to be honest. I'm not sure he'd have gone with Nunes for this one, even though I think Nunes has been brilliant for large part of the season when he's played. I think he might have chosen a different starting 11, the manager. But yeah, not having those two was a big blow.
Yeah, you talk about forgetting last weekend and there not being a hangover from that, but that's exactly where you saw it, isn't it? The fact that, for me, I'm just convinced that if Jota had come on 70 minutes yesterday, he'd have nicked a goal because I just felt like that was the energy that was lacking. I know, Neil, you were impressed with Nunes and we'll probably come on to talk about him in more depth later, but for me, actually, I don't think there's many individual performances I would come away from that game and really look at and point at and say that they really performed well yesterday or they gave a good account for themselves. It was screaming for one player for me to take a bit of accountability, to be that star player. And I know,
but Salah was trying to do that, as Ian says, and I would say too much. I agree with Ian. I think Salah decides it's going to be a Mo Salah hat-trick that wins this game.
So I was going to say Salah probably for me is the exception. He does get the 2 goals. You can't deny that a player that's come away with 2 goals isn't trying to turn up and do something and change the game. But then I think he thinks, okay, well, Diaz isn't performing to his best. Nunes is a little bit, out of position sometimes. Do think he plays well. I think he links up well, but I don't think Salah was maybe trusting to bring him in yesterday to get the game winner. So Salah tries to do too much on his own, and then it just lacks a little bit of rhythm and a little bit of link-up play for me. Again, I don't think the midfielders particularly helped them. Szoboszlai's always impressive. I'm always impressed with him. I have been since he joined. I've barely seen a bad performance from him, but I don't think he has as much of an impact yesterday as he has in other games. There just wasn't enough for me from individual performances to say realistically we would deserve 3 points out that game. Having said that, if you have a Jota on the bench and he's coming on and making a difference, then maybe we would have. But I think a point was a fair reflection. We didn't take our chances, but then, like you mentioned, Brighton fans are definitely coming away from that game thinking we didn't take some of our biggest chances. We probably deserved 3 points more than Liverpool did. It just wasn't enough for me. There was no player that reached that next level to make a difference and to change it all.
I think the not having the 2 on the bench is not just that you don't have them to come on, but it probably changes how the ones have to play for the.
No, I agree.
Because we all know that what usually happens is that 2 of them, usually Diaz and Nunes or Gakpo and Jota, whoever, depending on who starts, will come off on 60, which means that they can run that little bit harder and that little bit faster and that little bit stronger for the first hour, knowing that they only have to play 60. And yesterday they had to play 90. And that sort of changes how you do things.
So they all finish the game, they do, don't
they? They all finish the game now. That might be the only time for the entire season where Liverpool don't make any changes to their front 3 over the course of 90 minutes, and that it impacts on what you do from minute 1 to minute 90, because in minute 90 the strikers aren't as fresh. In minute 0 they're not doing exactly what they would be the previous week or the next week, and that's where you miss them. It's not necessarily that Jota might have done X, Y or Z, just that it's what the other person could have done for the first hour.
Can I ask you all a question? Are you better off than you thought you'd be before a ball was kicked this season? Liverpool in better health than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
I remember me and Neil had a conversation before the season started about these first 8 games, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we said, you deal on 16 points.
Yeah.
With the complexity of it, we got 17. And
17 and an asterisk.
Probably should have a minimum of 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that 100% feel that, and that's why it's absolutely fine yesterday. And then also the way obviously the last 2 for City, but also just in general the way the rest of the league picture looks. We'll come on and talk about that in a minute. But this is excellent in terms of where the team's currently at. I just think that they show so much tenacity and so many options. And I think there's also, I take Harriet's point yesterday that the front six, I'm struggling to come up with a performance at the back. I think Van Dijk's excellent throughout the 90 minutes and does the thing that sometimes he doesn't do to much of my annoyance, which is loads of actual full-on defending. Virgil defended for his life yesterday, Clive, which was great to see. The flip side is, and part of what cost Liverpool in the end is, second half especially, Robertson's just not at the races. He's poor in the first 10 of it. He's poor around the set piece. I think he has a couple of moments where he doesn't quite seem himself. You wouldn't surprise me if it was one of them that if you found out in a few weeks he's had a cold or something, because there was just a little thing. Normally his performance is all intensity, and it, to me, just seemed down a notch. But I thought that Virgil doing actual defending, like it matters to him so much,
making it look hard.
Yeah.
It's okay to make it look hard, Virgil. It's supposed to be difficult. Being the best defender in the world, it's supposed to be quite hard. It's okay just to show us that, you know.
Yeah, he did a bit of that for us, Clive. But Robertson will be really disappointed, especially for the goal. There's no getting away from it. It's his job there just to deal with that, and he fails to do so.
I think Van Dijk, is at fault for the first goal, is what I will say. I think McAllister will get the criticism for it, but I do think that was a pass.
Not a great ball.
It's not a great ball. It's not got enough on it, and it's into danger. But apart from that, I do take the point.
And what I would say on the Virgil thing as well, and I think you can have an argument about which one's more at fault, but Virgil can see the full picture in front of him, and he can see the three players moving towards McAllister, and I think, in different kind of circumstances or in a different game, maybe he chooses a different option, but I don't think it helped him. On the Robertson thing, in terms of defending for the goal, I don't particularly like the setup, because I don't think Robertson likes using his right foot. And if you put that ball into that area, he's got to use his right foot. It's either his head or his right foot he's using. And he can see that maybe there's a little bit of what happened to Joel Matip the week before on his mind, and he doesn't want to go for it with his foot. So he just leaves it, but you can't leave it. You just can't leave it, because the lads behind him then are all, and it doesn't look great for some of them, but they're not expecting it. The minute it goes past Robertson, and it's all happening, by the way, at such a speed, you cannot do anything. So Robertson's got to deal with it. What I would say is, I think Liverpool need to look at that, because that is more, if you're going to put it in that Andy Gray corridor of uncertainty area, then it's going to be a right foot or using your head. He doesn't want to use his right foot. So I think it's something Liverpool have to look at.
Struggled with that all game, though. Sorry, Phil. They struggled with the balls that were going into space from set pieces all game. Like there was a period in the first half where I think Brighton had 3 or 4 corners back to back.
First 10 minutes.
Every single one caused Liverpool an issue. Like every single one, when the ball was going into an area where there wasn't a particular player there, where Brighton players broke quickly, Liverpool struggled to deal with it, and that's what you ultimately see us get undone by with the goal. But Robertson had to do something, didn't he? I think it was the Matip thing the week before. I just think he was so cagey and a bit nervous about scoring an own goal or putting the ball in the back of his own net, that he just thought doing nothing was a better option.
I sort of think with that though, that the ball's excellent. I think Robertson also has a very short amount of time to make a decision about a ball, and it's not as clear cut as kick it or head it. It's sort of between the two. It's at a pretty awkward height.
Yeah, don't shind it in. It's not like he's seen a lot of it. Exactly, he was just in the right place in the queue.
Exactly, and this is the problem for me is more that it's the blocking. Like I think the most likely outcome of that not being a goal is if the ball just goes all the way through.
Problem's and Liverpool, giving away the free kick, by the way. And if Liverpool don't give away the free kick, but also they should be just stopping men getting to the ball as opposed to necessarily worrying about clearing it, because just get your blocking right. Like, it sounds ridiculous. I don't think Luton would have conceded that goal.
Yeah.
In the exact same situation.
The softest free kick, by the way, as well, it's the softest free kick.
There was one, and it comes from one about 30 seconds earlier up the pitch where Gomez is penalised.
Oh, it's outrageous. Don't start me.
I don't even know.
I'm trying not to do referees this week, Phil, but that was I wanted to go mad. Right in front of us.
I genuinely couldn't believe it, because I was
shoulder
over
to shoulder.
that side of the pitch.
The lad Gomez has got the ball and he ends up giving a free kick. Well, he's the one who's in possession of the ball, shoulder to shoulder.
It's just a proper normal football challenge that is just not a free kick in a million years, and obviously that's not why it happened, but if these things don't happen and these little decisions are just
but on that, just on that, you got me in the space, so we'll go there. It's all right. My point's more.
This off his long run.
I'm all right with it. This is the sort of thing that should happen in a football match when you play away from home with a good crowd that gets up. What I find difficult is I feel these days at Anfield we get absolutely none of them ever. Whereas I'm absolutely fine with, like, Taylor Buck's their manager, does that fine, and then he gives them everything for about 10 minutes. Again, without being sort of daft about it, it's sort of all right in that's football. You go away from home, it's harder. The crowd's up, it's harder. The referee's doing his best. It's literally home advantage. That's absolutely fine. I'd just quite like to see some of that paid back rather than the actual opposite happens, which is what happens at Anfield these days, because they're also determined not to look soft at Anfield.
Like it's a medal. There's a badge. They get a badge.
They're going to have the masculinity impugned.
Sew it on their arm, like scouts.
As it goes on. I want to just do one more little bit before we get into other facets of this and where the wider picture is. It's a little bit of it is praising them, Clive. You know, they use March at left back. It shouldn't work. It does over the course of the game. Dunk looks to me, you know, the manager talks about coaching, what that footballer and the perception of him will have been 5 years ago was to what he is now. I think it's incredible. I've already mentioned Gross as well in the range of options that they've got. But for me, you know, Clive, I come away from it just being so impressed with so many Brighton players. But simultaneously, to take Harriet's point from before, I don't feel as though I can name any of them who, for instance, have an absolute 90-minute belter or anything like that. Everyone's involved in the game in fits and starts. No one gets to run it.
I'm a commentator, so you would expect at least one cliche from me. I think it was a good time to play them. You know, I think it is a good season to play them because they're getting used to that different rhythm now, and he's taking the midweek games very seriously in terms of the amount of rotation that he's doing. And even though they continue to surprise us with the quality of players that we've never heard of, that they find and put out on the field, you know, they're not seasoned professionals, and it was a slightly depleted Brighton team, and I don't think they played exceptionally well. I don't think there's any comparison with the way they played against Liverpool last season. They did take a bit of a hammering the previous weekend, and I think they probably now got that in their DNA while they go through this phase. And they're losing two major players every summer and can't really spend all the money to bring in replacements. So they are a modern miracle in the sort of Premier League model, and it is a difficult away game. But I do think that it when you saw the team sheets, I think you probably felt we could win here today.
Absolutely. No shadow of a doubt. We'll have some league title chat after this from Anna speaking to John Gibbons about the Anthony Nolan charity. The interview you're about to hear is with Anna, done by John, whose little boy Francis Oldham was diagnosed with leukemia, aged just 3 months, and he needed a stem cell transplant to treat the blood cancer. With the support of the Anthony Nolan charity, an appeal was launched to find a donor, and we're delighted to be able to say that since the interview was filmed, and thanks to a huge campaign in the city and beyond that led to hundreds signing up to become a donor, a match was found for Francis, and all being well, he'll be eligible for a transplant in November. However, at the request of Anthony Nolan and with Anna's permission, we are still going to run this interview, as it'd be wonderful that people can still keep finding matches and keep helping people who need it and create even more happy endings. In Anna's words, because we asked her for a comment, she said this: we are so grateful for everyone who has joined the register in hopes of being Francis's match. We really hope everyone continues to join the register, as there are thousands of people still looking for their match. Many of these will be babies just like Francis. So here is the interview, and to find out more and how to become a donor for this, please visit anthonynolan.org.
And it is John Gibbons for the Anfield Wrap, and I'm really pleased to be joined in the studio by Anna, who's here to talk about Francis and a campaign that you have running at the moment that Liverpool fans might have seen. But first of all, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us more about Francis, first of all.
Oh, Francis, he's the cheekiest little boy ever. He is gorgeous, honestly. He's just such a happy little soul, and obviously we've had terrible news. Can't prepare you for it at all.
When did you first find out that the doctors were worried?
Well, the doctors became worried the start of August. I myself became worried a bit earlier than that. I've been worried since July, but the doctors weren't worried until August.
And so how old was Francis then?
Francis was 3 months.
So it is so young,
yeah,
is it? So you're in that period of joy, and then suddenly you've got these concerns.
Like he hasn't been able to be a baby because he's just been unwell.
Yeah, but he's still obviously got that personality that you see
he definitely has.
And stuff like that. So what did the doctors say to you? So how did they describe what was troubling them?
At first, we wasn't sure what was going on. You know, we had a temperature. He wasn't himself. He was really sick. The doctors thought he could have meningitis and wanted to do a lumbar puncture on him. But when they went to do that, he's had bruises all over his stomach, which that wasn't anything out of the ordinary for me because I've been before over them. And then they've questioned that and done blood tests, and then we found out something wasn't right.
And I guess you're learning about things all the time that,
every day.
you know, as a parent, you're not necessarily prepared for.
No,
you know, there's little things that you think, well, might go wrong because you're always worried, but something like this must have been so far from your mind, and then suddenly you're learning words that you didn't necessarily know, and diagnoses as well.
On the lead up to the diagnosis, everyone kept saying, you know, we don't think it's cancer. He's not showing the signs in his blood for it to be cancer. So when they said it was, you know, we were all so shocked.
Yeah. So what was the next steps after that then?
So when they've told us he's had cancer, straight away they've said he needs to start chemotherapy straight away, otherwise he's going to die. So that was our next step. We were on the cancer ward and he was getting treatment. Yeah,
and then I think it's been for 2 rounds of chemo.
No, so he's had his first round, he's just completed that, but now he'll have no cells for a week or 2, so he's prone to infection, he's really unwell at the minute.
So then I guess the next step, or one of the next steps is looking for a donor, because there'll be someone out there who can help him.
No, of course. So we're planning for his bone marrow transplant to be in November, obviously providing we find a match. It needs to be a 10 out of 10 match, so that's his best chance for the cancer to not come back. And
organisations like Andy Nolan, and that's how we got to know each other, that's what they try and do. They try and find matches, because the matches out there, and they found them in the past, and that must give you guys hope, I guess. Yeah, it gives us
massive hope, but then it's still quite daunting because, you know, people haven't got matches and we need a match quite soon, so it's still really worrying for us that we might not find that.
And like you say, it needs to be a 10 out of 10 match, but the more people who sign up to be a donor, and that is what effectively we're trying to do today. We're encouraging people to sign up to be a donor, because the chances of one person matching is small, but if there's enough people who sign up, then like you say, the match is out there somewhere.
Yeah, it is. And it's not, you know, it's not just England they're looking all over the world. So we just need to find that one person who is a 10 out of 10 match.
It must be so lovely that so many people have taken Francis to their heart, because you love him. He's your little boy. You loved him from the second you met him. But lots of other people, you know, are rooting for him now and are feeling like that they want to do anything that they can to help.
Yeah, it makes us feel so emotional. Like the amount of love and support Francis is getting, we can't thank everyone enough. It's literally, it melts our heart. It makes us feel so whole, and we're going through such a crisis in our family, and it's the most scariest time of our lives. And just the fact that the whole city's coming together for Francis, it really does mean the world to us.
You know, I guess a few weeks ago, none of us knew Francis and knew the story. You know, you've obviously, you know, love him, he's your boy, but lots of people have taken him to their hearts as well.
Everyone loves Francis. Honestly, the amount of messages we get, people saying, like, I can't stop thinking about this baby, I wish I could do more to help.
But people who can do to help in particular, it's 18 to 30-year-old males, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
So if you if you're watching this and you're an 18 to 30-year-old male, or you've got a relative who is, or friends, or basically anyone now in your family or your close circle, if you would encourage them to go to anthonynolan.org, it's all there, it's all set out for them. They send you the stuff out. You can do it at home. You can see if you're first of all eligible to donate, and then it's just wait and see. And people might remember about a year ago now, actually, we spoke to Ethan, who was a donor and signed up and didn't necessarily know if he was to hear anything, but did, and he saved Libby's life, and that's what someone else could do.
That's what we want. That's definitely what we want. And if someone's not saving Francis's life, they're saving someone else's life.
Yeah, absolutely. The support from the club must have been nice as well, because Liverpool is, you know, it's huge, isn't it? The sort of the reach they've got, and to see the banner at the Carp and the tweets sort of going out, that must have meant a lot.
Obviously, as a family, we support Liverpool, and, you know, football is a big thing, especially in our family. So when we were seeing the support that we were receiving from the football club, we were just astonished. We were like, wow, we can't believe that the club is doing this for Francis.
Yeah, I presume he's got a little kit.
Yeah, he's got many kits, many.
That's always the first thing you do, isn't it? Best of luck to you is sort of all I can say. If there's anything that we can do to help, if there's anything that the people can do to help, but I guess the main thing is to, if anyone's watching this who in that age bracket who can become a donor do, but also just share this video if you can, share anything that you see if you can, because I've said it before, but I could keep reiterating it, that person who can help Francis is out there, and we just need to find them, and the more people who can sign up. And I know there has been an increase since all this, hasn't it?
A 500% increase over the last weekend.
Yeah, which is amazing. So, but we just need to keep going on it.
Yeah, and obviously we're so grateful for everyone's support. We can't thank the whole city enough for what they're doing for us and for Francis.
Yeah, like I say, it is antinolan.org if you can help. If you are an 18 to 30-year-old, we just strongly encourage you to look into being a donor. Do check out Ethan's story. Ethan Buckley is still tweeting about it. What an amazing thing he did for a stranger, but I think, you know, it's fair to say, you know, speaking for him, it's changed his life as well in terms of sort of what it's done for him. So if you can help Francis or like Anna says, you know, and someone else in the world who you could be a donor for, then what a powerful thing to do. It's hard to imagine a greater gift that you can give than that. So best of luck to you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks.
Excellent stuff all around. Thanks to John and thanks to Anna around that. Harriet, worth pointing out, as we rattled through, as we were driving back last night, Liverpool Women at Prenton Park beat Aston Villa Women 2-0, puts them theoretically top of the pile. Now, you can do the thing where you say you don't look at the league table too early, but it's a 22-game season, and Liverpool have got a Merseyside derby coming up where they could be 3 from 3, which would give them 9 points, which would put them in very, very, very healthy conditions in comparison to last season, because from the first 3 games that they've played this season, if they get another one, they'll have quite literally 9 points more from the same fixtures as they had last season.
Yeah, well, they played Chelsea at home, and the first day of last season they win, and a huge surprise result, but then they don't really build on that in the immediate aftermath of that game. They get a few results that don't go their way. Well, this time they go to the Emirates away, first game of the season, record crowd in the WSL, was it 54,000, something like that. They get a result which was completely unprecedented, and then they play an Aston Villa side who have strengthened over summer, who a lot of people
who came fifth last year. A lot of people are talking about getting into those Champions League spots this season, and they dominate the game. Like, I watched it and I felt like Liverpool Women had gone up a whole other level this season. The control they had, the defenders that they brought in, that back line looks totally transformed, looks so in control, looked so like the rhythm just flowed throughout the whole game. They looked so in cohesion with each other, which for a team that's dropped in so many new players and lost a few key players as well, you wouldn't expect that so early on in the season. Thought the substitutions continually made Liverpool better. They hung on to their lead. They really grinded out the result, and then they come away with the win, and they're sitting on 6 points with Leicester, by the way, at the top of the table. Both teams who you probably wouldn't have expected to get many points if you looked at their opening fixtures, because Leicester struggled last season, and Liverpool come away from 2 really, really tough fixtures with 6 points and sitting in that top of the table spot and performing really well. So everyone should go to Anfield next weekend?
So everyone should go to Anfield next week, and it is the Merseyside derby. There is tickets available. I think the Upper Kenny is the stand on sale now, and the Kop as well. So if you want to get in the Kop and you don't usually get a chance to, go and get your tickets for the Merseyside derby. It's a 4:30 on Sunday, I think. 4:30 on Sunday.
It is £10 for adults and £1 for children accompanying adults, which is incredible.
A really good game. It was a really good game at Goodison there last year. Not so much Anfield, but better at Goodison, and hopefully this year will be better at Anfield.
Yeah, well, Everton have lost 2, and it'd be a real shame not to continue that, to be honest with you. Liverpool are playing Everton. There's only one thing that you should want more than anything else in the whole wide world, which is for Liverpool to win the game, and I intend to be there and be a maniac just in advance of that one. Let you know, Clive.
I don't want to be reading about you on Monday.
There was another incident. Clive, you're up for to do a couple of things around Labour Party conference. Do you want to tell us about one of them?
The main purpose is an association that I have developed with a charity called Gambling with Lives. You may have heard of the Big Step. I took my little step in the summer to step back from commentating on games for TalkSport. Very amicable parting. I just felt uncomfortable. It was a selfish decision, really, with reading out live odds during a commentary. I'm not anti-gambling per se, but I don't feel as if I should be promoting gambling. James Grimes got in touch with me from the Big Step just to say thank you and well done. I just said, if there's anything I can do going down the line. And he said, well, we've got this session at Labour Party conference hoping to put some pressure on the future government to implement this white paper, which an awful lot of which is still ifs and buts and maybes and somewhere down the lines. Last night, my wife Susan and I met up with some of the people I'll be working with today, and we met some bereaved families. We're talking about a suicide a day, which can be directly attributed to a gambling addiction. And it's a very difficult addiction because it's not easy to detect. You can tell when somebody's doing crack, you know. You can't necessarily tell when they're hiding an awful gambling debt. And the biggest problem that the families have got is that, I don't know if you've ever seen the dope sick thing or the OxyContin, that the betting companies almost try to make out that these are just people who can't handle life, that they're victims of, you know, that their own weakness. There is now neurological evidence to support this as a proper addiction, which should be regarded by NHS in the same way as smoking and drinking and everything else. And that's the step forward that they want to take. And so, consequently, just having a voice who's coming from the outside, who doesn't gamble, who doesn't really get it, but is learning day by day about the intrusive nature of this addiction and the association that it has with football. I say it's opening my eyes and it's starting to open my mouth a little bit more, so I'll be chairing that session today.
Okay, we will move ourselves along and have some league title chat. Phil, it's a great result for Liverpool and North London. City looked to me like they were playing out 2018 Anfield style. To go back to your point about being built to beat the bottom 10, you know, to be 4 off the top, given the fixtures, Chelsea will be in the top 10. There's no shadow of a doubt on that as far as I'm concerned. Newcastle will be in the top 10. Brighton will be in the top 10 and Tottenham will be in the top 10. Liverpool have got the results they've got, having gone to all of those places so far this campaign. For me, you said before, we'd have took 16, we're on 17, but everything else, our run of fixtures to come, makes me think there should be no limit to the ambition.
I agree. The next 4 is, I think the people talking about Sundays being season defining, I don't think it was. I think the next 4 is the season defining bit. If Liverpool take 12 points from 12, we are 29 from 36. 29 from 36 means the absolute worst position we can be is 3 points off?
Yeah.
3 points off top. Now, that's where you want to be after 12 games at worst, isn't it? Especially when you consider that team isn't Manchester City. Manchester City's fixtures are in the next 4. I think, is it Brighton, Manchester United? There's a Chelsea in there as well. There's somebody else, and it's not an easy one either. That's hard for them. It's a really, really big passage now because it's sort of the next. It's not just that. It's that after that as well. We go to Manchester City, and then I think we play Fulham.
We have a week where we play Fulham, we go to Sheffield United, and then we go to Palace.
And then you get into Arsenal and Manchester United at home, and then it's Christmas. And there's a real opportunity. There's a real opportunity for Liverpool to go on a run here.
Yeah.
A real opportunity.
Have you decided what I'm getting?
What we're getting, Clive, is a lot of points. I want to be crystal clear. What I'm getting is a lot of points.
And our 4th hardest away game is probably West Ham now. For the remainder of the season. It's October.
No, it's true, Clive. It's true.
I know, but steady.
No.
It's not necessarily saying that it's easy or anything like that. It's more what we've got out of the way, because I think the complexity of the fixtures that Liverpool have played has gone really under the radar. Like Tottenham sit top, for example. Everyone's talking about the 3 promoted sides being 3 of the worst teams that have ever played in the Premier League. They've played all 3 of them. If Liverpool had Tottenham's fixtures, I think we'd probably have 22 points. And I'm assuming that we play Tottenham at home as opposed to whatever. And Manchester City, I think we'd have more points than Manchester City do as well from their fixtures. And that's why this is so, I think it's really exciting.
I think the rest are encouraging. I mean, what we saw at Chelsea on the opening day, I thought they'd be okay.
Yeah.
They're not. I didn't believe for one moment that Manchester United could be as bad as they are. I thought Newcastle United was still a bit kind of plain for top 4, but they're very plain at their worst. Tottenham are great, they're fun, but I said to you, didn't I, pre-season, I thought top 4 would be a real challenge for Liverpool now. I'm still not convinced, because of what we said about number 6 and year 1 and all that. I'm still not convinced it's a title challenge. But I tell you, those 2 weren't quite right yesterday. It was a really weird game at Arsenal, and they weren't quite right, either of them.
Yeah, I think it's too early to get kind of maybe too carried away. I take Phil's point, but these games aren't played on paper. So whilst I appreciate that,
well, every team's got a player. Apart from that's so we got to see that when we went to Wolves in Neto. City got Netoed into the ground. Now they haven't all got a Neto because I think he's arguably, he's one of the best players, if not the best player outside the conventional sort of top 6. I think, but Forest have got threats. Everton have got threats. They've got Calvert-Lewin and they're getting them back into nick. You can sort of go through, if you look at those fixtures that Phil's talking about. Brentford are missing Tony, but Mbueno's dangerous and they're well set up. The point is, your point that they're not played on paper is a really fair one. But that said, they're not. None of them have got Raheem Sterling.
No, listen, don't get me wrong. I think if you look at it, Liverpool have played 5 away of the first 8, and I think it's important because, away from home, it normally is more difficult, and you back Liverpool at Anfield to get a result against the majority. But I do think 8 games is just too early. I don't quite know where this Liverpool team is yet, but I think once you get to maybe 15, 16 games, you'll have a much better idea where they are. And I think the point that Clive made around City and Arsenal not looking quite right, I think yesterday what it does highlight in a number of different ways is the importance of having a really, really strong defensive midfielder in certain games of football. And City don't have theirs, and they haven't had theirs in 3 out of the last 4 games, and they've tried different combinations against Newcastle, different combinations when they played, I think, Arsenal. The game where they do get Rodri back is the Leipzig game in Europe, and they win that one, which is not a coincidence in my opinion, and he will come back into the fray.
He's the most important footballer in the country.
You can argue because there's no one else who can do what he can do. And City go to Wolves, and again they try something like slightly different again. It doesn't quite work, and they get exposed, and Wolves take advantage. So him coming back will make a world of difference. I just don't think you can make the call yet on some of these teams. Like, I think Spurs are having a great time and they're enjoying it, but I've not seen anything from Spurs to suggest they're going to be able to sustain that. I think there'll come a time when Spurs will have 3 or 4 poor results on the run.
1-0 against Sheffield United at home in the 96th minute. That's not.
There'll be those moments for Tottenham, I think. So I think from a Liverpool perspective, let's see where we are after the next 6 or 7, because as we've all said, you look at them on paper.
But Phil Blundell's big 4.
Liverpool should be winning the majority of those games, and they should have the tools to be able to kind of deal with most of those sides. And my point around having a number 6, I think it's showcased a lot more against certain teams, but Liverpool will have the majority of possession in lots of those games, and they'll back themselves because of the forward players they've got, where they can probably take the game away from lots of teams. But when you come up against a side like a Brighton, for instance, who are willing to have a go at are willing to pass through the lines and kind of penetrate through the middle, that's when you see it highlighted. So I think when we break for the next international kind of break, it's November time, isn't it? I think we'll have a really good idea what this Liverpool team's about.
So it's Phil Blundell's big 4. I'm going to say it again.
Yeah, pre-Wolves, I didn't think... I was looking at City's fixtures and I just didn't feel like they were going to drop points for ages, and then they've lost 2 back-to-back and everything kind of gets blown wide open, doesn't it? I think it is too early to be seriously talking about title race.
Surrounded by cowards.
It's never
However,
too early.
I do,
Surrounded by cowards.
I do feel like there's going to be...
Phil.
Honestly.
There's going to be a few teams that are in
ditch.
and around that conversation for a long time, and I think it's going to make for an exciting title race, and I just hope that Liverpool are still in it, and I think that they will be. You've put 4 off the top here. We're 3. We're only 3, aren't we?
Are we 3 off the
3
top?
points off
Only
the top.
3
Yeah,
off the top.
I'll give you an extra point.
If City had won, it would have been 4. But
Yeah.
Oh, just 3 points off the
Just
top.
3 points off the top. All to
just gets
play
likelier,
for. It
Harry,
just
it's
gets
just-
better.
And there's the Spurs replay to come, yeah.
I mean, that would only go one way. But yes, it is. I think, Phil, I'll go back to you because I can't be bothered with the rest of these cowards.
No, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
She's got the spade out. It's fine.
It's just too early,
It sort of is and it sort of isn't, in that, you're not that far away. Like, at the end of the next block, it is a third of the season is worth pointing out, and that's why
We're at 20%. We're past 20%.
Yeah,
21% of the season's gone.
There we are, 21% of the season is gone. More of it will be gone. The next block, at the end of the next block, we're going to North America, doing a little bit of a tour around North America. So on November the 15th, we're in Chicago. I've written this down in my handwriting, and loads of these places have got mad names, so all the best. November the 15th in Chicago at what's called Pub 97. November the 16th, we go to Vancouver to go to something that is called Butcher and Bullock, which is gloriously Anglo-Saxon naming in there as well. I'm very much looking forward to saying that on the stage. On the 17th, we are in in Los Angeles at Joxa Dailies in there, which is a reference to a Sean O'Casey play. On November the 18th, we are in Phoenix at a place called the Crown Public House. On November the 19th, we are in Austin for the PointsBet Sports Bar. We'll be in there. And then on the 20th, we go to Atlanta, which is a Monday, and it's in Buckhead. There's two variants on the Fado Irish pub, and we're in the Buckhead edition thereof. You're just laughing at me here, Philip.
I'm fascinated by this gaff in Atlanta. I want to go now.
Don't worry, Phil, they're in Tubrook on the 21st.
But gladly. The AnfieldWrap.com/TAW live for all of them as we rattle all the way through. It's been exciting. It's been good. It feels exciting. I hope that you feel the same way about it. Back for the Merseyside derby. More before then. I think we're doing transfers in this slot next week because you can't get enough of them, and we aim to please. But in the meantime, thanks very much indeed to Clive Tilsley, Phil Blundell, Harry Pryor and Ian Ryan, Andy Heaton for doing a bit of producing at the start and at the end, Jordan Singleton for being a trooper and going all the way through. It has been a pleasure. It is the Anfield Wrap. The difficult bits out the way. From now on, it's all downhill.